in that house in Australia, but it wasn't Mr. Depp. It was Miss Heard. Other than Miss Heard's testimony, all the evidence we've seen
Sorry,
in the
even snel
trial
wat
shows
drink
that
ik.
it was
Mijn
Miss
keel,
Heard
ik zie
who
ik
attacked
nu.
and grievously wounded Mr. Depp when she threw a vodka bottle at him, severing his finger.
Mijn keel, ik ga echt dood.
Mr. Depp told Dr. Kipper that when Dr. Kipper arrived to treat Mr. Depp,
Ja, ik kan niet meer. Mijn keel.
you've seen the pictures of the bar area in Australia with the broken vodka bottles on the ground and trails of blood dropped on the floor and a bloody tissue on the floor. You've heard from Ben King that the tip
Maar ja, gaat het voor de rest wel goed met jou, wees?
And you heard from Dr. Gilbert that the injury to Mr. Depp's finger could have been caused exactly as he described. And interestingly, you heard from Christina Sexton that Ms. Heard told her that Mr. Depp injured his finger while swinging a bottle around. Not smashing a phone, as
Je hoeft niet genaaid te voelen.
Courtroom, but swinging a bottle around.
Of niet?
You also heard from Ms. Sexton that Ms. Heard first told her about the bottle raid in Australia while Ms. Sexton was at Ms. Heard's home, meeting with her lawyers the day before Ms. Sexton was scheduled to be deposed in this case. What's presented at this trial shows that this is not the only time that Ms. Heard disclosed a sexual assault at a convenient time for purposes of litigation she's involved in. The first time Ms. Heard claimed that Mr. Depp sexually assaulted her in the Bahamas in December 2015 was after Tara Roberts, the manager of Mr. Depp's island, submitted a sworn statement in the UK action describing the incident she testified to in this courtroom, where Ms. Heard chased Mr. Depp out of the house, was yelling and then pleading with Mr. Depp to stay while clawing at his hair and clothes, and left Mr. Depp with an injury to his face. That's the first time she disclosed it, after there was contrary evidence. Ms. Heard testified about another incident just 2 weeks after the events in Australia, where Mr. Depp supposedly attacked Ms. Heard and almost pushed her sister Whitney down the stairs. Whitney is the only witness that you heard from that backs up Ms. Heard's version of events. She's it. And the only witness, other than Ms. Heard, who claims to have seen Mr. Depp physically attack Ms. Heard. But just like Ms. Heard's version of the events in Australia, her testimony about the staircase incident and that of her sister Whitney's just doesn't square up with the other evidence in this trial. Their testimony is contradicted by the testimony of Travis McGivern and Debbie Lloyd, who were there that night. Ms. Heard and Whitney testified that Mr. Depp threw a Red Bull can that hit or almost hit Ms. Lloyd. Ms. Lloyd testified that never happened. Mr. McGivern testified that it was Ms. Heard who threw a can at Mr. Depp. Ms. Heard testified that Whitney was between her and Mr. Depp when she punched him. Mr. McGivern testified that he was the one between Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp when Ms. Heard punched Mr. Depp. Ms. Heard testified that Mr. Depp was able to get his hands in her hair, yank her, and then hit her in the face with the cast he had on. But you heard from Ms. Lloyd and Dr. Colbert, Mr. Depp's medical doctor, who treated Mr. Depp's finger injury, that Mr. Depp's finger was in a delicate state. He had a pin in his finger, a skin graft, and a soft cast that immobilized Mr. Depp's 2 middle fingers. And tellingly, the only picture of an injury from this incident is of Mr. Depp with a shiner. And then we have May 21st, 2016. Ms. Heard testified that Mr. Depp threw a phone at her face, causing a visible injury. Ms. Heard has shown you pictures she claims to show this injury, but these photographs are not to be trusted. You heard from Mr. Neumeister that, like many of the photographs Ms. Heard has presented in this case, these photos were stored in a photo editing application. And these photos show signs of manipulation. These 2 photographs were taken at the exact same time and have the exact same file name, but they are visually different. One shows significantly more redness on Ms. Heard's face than the other, which doesn't show any injury at all. Ms. Heard testified that the difference is explained by turning on a light. But there is no way Ms. Heard could have taken a picture, turned on a light, and then taken another picture with every hair in the exact same place within the same second. It's impossible. Moreover, you heard from multiple witnesses, including Officer Melissa Sines, Officer Tyler Haddon, and Officer William Gatlin, Isaac Baruch, Alejandro Romero, who saw Ms. Heard on or after May 21st and saw no injuries to her face before she showed up to that courthouse with a mark on May 27th. And the very next day, after Ms. Heard walked into court with what appeared to be a bruise on her face to obtain a domestic violence restraining order against Mr. Depp, Ms. Heard was photographed laughing with her best friend, fresh-faced, with no bruise on her face.
She said a fresh bruise on your face, bitch. Look at you. Look at you laughing.
What we have is a mountain of unproven allegations that are wild, over the top, and implausible. And you can't pick and choose which of these wild allegations to believe and which ones to disregard. You either believe all of it or none of it. Either Mr. Depp sexually assaulted Ms. Heard with a bottle in Australia, or Ms. Heard got up on that stand in front of all of you and made up that horrific tale of abuse. Either she's a victim of truly horrific abuse, or she is a woman who is willing to say absolutely anything. It is disturbing to think that Ms. Heard would make up the horrific tales of abuse that she testified to in this courtroom. But this case doesn't come down to whether you believe Ms. Heard or you believe Mr. Depp. This case comes down to whether you believe Ms. Heard or you believe Mr. Depp, Christy Dombrowski, Sean Bett, Malcolm Connolly, Travis McGivern,
Ja, noem gelijk hele kanaal.
Stephen Wyatt, Dr. Kipper, nurses Debbie Lloyd and Aaron Pilati, Tara Roberts,
Kate James, Kate Moss, Tering, Dr. Colbert.
Morgan Tremaine,
Hebben al die mensen geluisterd? Dat zijn veel mensen.
Officers Tyler Haddon,
Tering.
Officer William Gatlin.
Hebben we serieus naar al die mensen lopen luisteren, Camille? God damn it. God damn it.
Is a story of
Babe.
far too many women.
Babe,
The overwhelming evidence.
Johnny Depp heeft gewoon fucking 7 vrouwen als... hoe zeg je dat? In Nederlands? Witnesses. Hoe zeg je dat in Nederlands? Shit, ik ben vergeten.
Not just to Mr. Depp, but to true survivors of domestic abuse.
Merci.
Ms. Heard to hold herself out as a public figure representing domestic abuse. It was false, it was defamatory, and it caused irreparable harm. And to talk more about that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and my friend, Mr. Chu.
Oh girl. Beijo.
Thank you, Camille. Logistics are not our strong suit. And thanks to all of you, truly, for taking so much time over these last several
You're welcome.
weeks.
Thank you for making this case so interesting.
To his friends, to his family, and to so many others who have come forward physically in this courtroom, some from a very long distance, to tell you the truth. And to finally, after so many years, to correct the record. As Ms. Vasquez said, you have now come to
Nou, weet je, ik ga mijn telefoon een beetje opladen. Bij jou laten, ja?
scary.
Of...
We
Café, ja?
also told you at the start of this trial that you were going to
Yo,
get to know
café,
the real
beige.
Johnny Depp, not the many characters that you play
Caféotje.
so wonderful in the movies.
Café,
The
ja?
man himself. We
Oh,
kept
zie je, joh.
You've met the real Johnny Depp. You have heard that Mr. Depp came from humble, very difficult beginnings. You have heard from Mr. Depp's big sister, who's here in the courtroom today, Christy Dombrowski, who told you how Mr. Depp grew up in a deeply troubled household with a mother, Betty Sue, who was physically abusive and mentally cruel. As Ms. Dombrowski testified, one of the names that Betty Sue called Mr. Depp when he was a little boy was One Eye, because he had to wear an eye patch for some time. His mother used to hit his father and the kids, including young Mr. Depp. And when his mother got violent, Mr. Depp would retreat and find a place to hide. Sometimes he and his sister Christy would find a place to hide together.
This is so
Mr. Depp
interesting, yo.
never hit back. And like his father, stood up and took the violence, or he retreated from it. Those are habits he returned to later when he found himself in a relationship with another person who returned his love with abuse, with physical abuse. And despite this long, unhappy history with his mother, Johnny never turned his back on her. In her elder years, Mr. Depp moved his mother to California, and he moved her to Los Angeles right across the street from his house so his two children could get to know her. He hired nurses for his mother. He made sure to take care of her and to make her comfortable. She never went to hospice. She had the nurses make her comfortable to the day she died. And from those humble and difficult beginnings, Mr. Depp grew into one of the greatest actors and movie stars of his generation. Now, he came to Los Angeles with his first love as a young man, planning to be a musician. Music had been a part of his life ever since he found peace himself in his room as a young boy when he was escaping, and he learned to play the guitar and would use it as solace. But it was an actor as his star began its rise, as he appeared in films too many to mention, including, of course, his iconic role as Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Fame came with challenges to Mr. Depp and his family. It was a strange experience for a shy young man from Kentucky to be thrust into the limelight, pursued by paparazzi, and to have even his very name become a brand. But he did his best to live a private, quiet life, and despite it all, and over the years built a reputation as a respected artist and as a decent, very well-liked man, which you've heard from many people. Mr. Depp dated major figures like Winona Ryder, Kate Moss, and Vanessa Paradis, with whom he spent 14 years together and with whom they had their children. Before Amber Heard, ladies and gentlemen, no woman ever before Amber Heard ever claimed that Mr. Depp raised a hand to her in his 58 years. And no other woman since Ms. Heard made that false claim back on May 27th, 2016, and repeated it in her December 2018 op-ed. Has any woman come forward since? This is Me Too without any Me Too. To the contrary, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Kate Moss 2 days ago testify. This is a woman who has never testified in any very private person, testified that Mr. Depp never abused her, and that Ms. Heard lied to you. And she lied to you twice when she told you.
Objection, Your Honor. That, Ms. Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I was saying, Ms. Heard lied to you twice when she suggested to you that Mr. Depp pushed Kate Moss down the stairs. You told her, you heard her say just 2 days ago that Mr. Depp never did that, and he never hit her, and he never kicked her. That was one of—
Objection, Your Honor. That's not what she testified
It's
to.
exactly
We
what
just
she
discussed that.
testified. Thank you, Your Honor. They're still at it. Ms. Heard and her lawyers have spent much of this trial talking about drugs and alcohol. Mr. Depp is no saint, and he has never claimed to be one. He has made mistakes in his life, as we all have. Yes, he has struggled with drugs and alcohol, but you never heard him deny that. We told you that in the opening statement. He owns his flaws. He admits to them. He told you all about them. But he is not a violent abuser. He's not an abuser, as Ms. Heard claims. And he did not and does not deserve to have his life, his legacy, destroyed by a vicious lie. And this is, as Ms. Vasquez said, this is the 6th anniversary of that. There is a world of difference between having substance abuse problems and being a physical abuser. Ms. Heard falsely accused Mr. Depp of beating her. That was her first allegation, and you know why, and you know that wasn't true. Then, years after the fact, for the first time, she accused him of raping her. The lies have grown and metastasized over time, and they need to be stopped. And those false accusations have caused more harm to Mr. Depp than her fists ever did. And make no mistake, Ms. Heard has admitted, unlike Mr. Depp, Ms. Heard has admitted on the audio tapes you've heard at this trial, and Ms. Vasquez just played you a few of them, she has admitted repeatedly to physically abusing Mr. Depp. And I would just like to take a minute to talk about the harm to Mr. Depp and his family. You have heard from several of the people in Mr. Depp's life about the damage Ms. Heard's lies have done to him. You heard from his sister, Christy, who told you how hard it has been on his family and on her little brother personally. You heard from Mr. Depp's friend of 4 decades, and that's volumes about life, quote, completely wrecked, unquote, on Ms. Heard's lies. You heard Mr. Depp testify that he has lost nothing less than everything because of Ms. Heard's lies. Nothing less than everything. You heard about Mr. Depp's children, Jack and Lily Rose. His children have had to hear these allegations since 2016. And then when that started to die down, they had to hear them again. This time in December 2018, this time in the Washington Post, which is a national and international publication. And Mr. Depp has had to live with the knowledge that his children will keep hearing those false rumors and statements against him. Mr. Depp has millions of fans, people who grew up watching him on 21 Jump Street, which is something you heard Ms. Heard mock on one of the tapes that was played to you. Or they grew up watching him play the swashbuckling pirate Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, or Willy Wonka. Mr. Depp means something to those people, and those people mean a lot to Mr. Depp. He's a fond memory from childhood or adolescence or adulthood. And to tarnish him as an abuser is to destroy him in the eyes of many of these people who will never look at him the same way again. And because of what Ms. Heard did, and because of what she said, Mr. Depp will go to his grave knowing no matter what he does, no matter the outcome of this trial, there are people who used to look up to him who now believe that he beat a woman, which is the worst thing you can say about a man. Beyond the personal and emotional effects of Ms. Heard's lies, their impact on Mr. Depp and his family, the damage she inflicted on his reputation and career is undeniable. There's an old saying that a good reputation takes a lifetime to build, but only a second to destroy. Mr. Depp spent, in fact, a lifetime building his reputation as one of the greatest actors and movie stars of his generation, an iconic figure respected and liked throughout Hollywood and recognized and admired throughout the world. You heard evidence from Jack Wiggum, who was here today, Mr. Depp's agent, who explained that Mr. Depp, quote, was very well regarded and respected by peers in the artistic community, unquote. And you heard further testimony from Mr. Wiggum that Mr. Depp had a deal with Disney to play Captain Jack Sparrow in the 6th movie sequel of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise for $22.5 million. But as Mr. Wiggum explained, all of that changed when Ms. Heard published her op-ed in December of 2018 in the Washington Post. Quoting from the testimony you heard by Mr. Wiggum, quote, after the op-ed, it was impossible to get him a studio film, which is what we normally would have focused on in that time period, unquote. Another quote, it was on the damage, the impact of this op-ed, as opposed to the other stories that you saw, the other publications. Mr. Wiggum explained why this one was so damaging. Quote, it was a first-person account. I mean, from the victim. It's extremely impactful. You know, with respect to Johnny, it was catastrophic because it was coming from a first-person account. It was not from a journalist. It was coming from someone observing. It was from someone saying, this happened to me, unquote. You also heard from Richard Marx, an expert in the inner workings of Hollywood and the entertainment industry, who explained that the impact of Ms. Heard's allocations on Mr. Depp was devastating. Quote, it's devastating. It's the type of claim, the Me Too claim of sexual violence, domestic abuse that has canceled a list of actors, unquote. And for many, and Mr. Depp would agree with this, rightfully so, Me Too is an important movement, a movement that Mr. Depp supports and believes in. It's for true survivors of abuse, not Ms. Heard. True victims need protection, and true perpetrators need to face the repercussions. But as you've heard in this case, Amber Heard is not a true victim, and Mr. Depp certainly is not an abuser. Again, nobody has come out of the woodwork to say, Me Too. This is the unique and singular Me Too case where there's not a single Me Too. In fact, to the contrary, Kate Moss, who was in a romantic relationship with Mr. Depp for 3 years, which he broke off, came forward to say, no, he never pushed her down any stairs. And you heard Doug Banya, an expert in internet and social media analytics, testify to the impact that Ms. Heard's allegations had on Mr. Depp's popularity. Ms. Heard's lawyers tried to tell you that all of the damage done to Mr. Depp's career was because of his own behavior, because he was sometimes unprofessional or sometimes late to set. But that doesn't hold up. Mr. Depp has been a major figure in Hollywood for decades. Yes, Mr. Depp was late to set sometimes. But as Richard Marx testified, quote, when you hire Johnny Depp, you get all of Johnny Depp, which includes being late, unquote. Keenan Wyatt, who has worked for decades as a sound engineer on some of Mr. Depp's films, said much the same thing. And by the way, Mr. White is not and never has been an employee of Mr. Depp. He's just worked with him on movies. Mr. Depp wasn't canceled by Hollywood because Ms. Heard falsely accused him of domestic violence and sexual violence on the pages of the Washington Post on December 18, 2018, repeating the prior lies of May 17, 2016. And as you saw at trial, Ms. Heard published the op-ed on December 18, 2018, 2 years after her public allegations of domestic abuse. Ms. Heard's publication of the op-ed coincided with the release of her major movie Aquaman that December. And it coincided as well with her announcement on Twitter that she was becoming an ACLU ambassador for women's rights. And in that op-ed, Ms. Heard repeated her false allegations against Mr. Depp. Now, she didn't mention his name. She didn't have to. Everyone knew exactly who and what Ms. Heard was talking about. Ms. Heard got on the stand and tried to tell you that the op-ed was not about Mr. Depp. She then said, well, it wasn't just about Mr. Depp. But she couldn't deny, and this was yesterday, that this was at least partly about Mr. Depp. The op-ed obviously is about Mr. Depp, and the testimony at trial proves that. You will recall testimony from the ACLU's representative, an attorney, stating that Mr. Depp's name was included in drafts of the op-ed, and that they and others understood that the op-ed was about Mr. Depp. Specifically, the ACLU representative testified, among other things, quote, based on my review of prior drafts of the op-ed, I knew that she was referring to Johnny Depp and the marriage, unquote. Ms. Heard's claim that the op-ed is not about Mr. Depp is just another one of her many, many lies. In fact, what you have seen time and time again through the course of this trial is that Ms. Heard lies. She lies all the time about things that are important and the things that aren't important. She just can't seem to stop. And as Ms. Vasquez said, what she routinely does is she doesn't take ownership or responsibility for anything, and she has an excuse for everything. But in this courtroom, confronted with the evidence, she can't run away from her own words. As my colleague said, words matter, and Ms. Heard is condemned by her own words. So Tom, let's please take a look at the words she used in her op-ed, which is Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, and which Ms. Heard published in December 2018, 2 years after she first publicly accused Mr. Depp of being an abuser on May 27, 2016. The title of the op-ed reads, as you can see, quote, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, unquote. Below that, Ms. Heard states, quote, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out, unquote. And below that, Ms. Heard states, quote, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse, unquote. Each of those statements clearly refers to Ms. Heard's allegations against Mr. Depp. And taken collectively, their message and their implication about Mr. Depp is clear, i.e. that Ms. Heard is a survivor of domestic abuse and that Mr. Depp is a perpetrator. The context in the rest of the op-ed makes that clear as well. Consider, for instance, this line, quote, imagine a powerful man is a ship, like the Titanic. That ship is a huge enterprise. When it strikes an iceberg, there are a lot of people on board desperate to patch up holes. not because they believe in or even care about the ship, but because their own fates depend upon the enterprise, unquote. Everyone in Hollywood knew, and everyone in this courtroom now knows exactly what Ms. Heard intended those words to mean. The ship, the Titanic, is Mr. Depp, and Ms. Heard was the iceberg that sank him. That's precisely what Ms. Heard was saying in the op-ed. And in just the same way, everyone in Hollywood knew, and Hollywood and elsewhere knew exactly what Ms. Heard meant by the words, quote, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, unquote. That was a clear reference to the day 2 years earlier, on May 27th, 2016. And as Ms. Vasquez said, that was 6 years to the day. That's when his life ended. That was 6 years ago to this day, when Ms. Heard, on May 27th, 2016, walked into court with her publicist, Jody Gottlieb, having tipped off TMZ with an alleged mark on her face to accuse Mr. Depp of abuse. As always, Ms. Heard was quite mindful of her image. She was careful to portray herself as the innocent representative of abuse survivors, and by implication, Mr. Depp as the perpetrator of domestic abuse. She was the woman who, in the words of her title, supposedly, quote, spoke up against sexual violence, unquote. Now, Ms. Heard has done a lot to try to walk away from the title in particular. That's true to form. She has testified that she didn't write it, and she will argue later that she shouldn't be held liable because she didn't write it. But as the court's instructions, which you heard this morning, make clear, Ms. Heard didn't have to personally write any part of the op-ed for her to defame Mr. Depp through implication in the Washington Post. And let's please, Tom, turn to Plaintiff's Exhibit 3. Ms. Heard, as you all can see on the screen, retweeted the article, including the title on her Twitter page. Ms. Heard put her name on it. And she proudly declared, quote, today I published this op-ed in the Washington Post, ellipsis, unquote. Her tweet includes the title with the words, quote, I spoke up against sexual violence, unquote, prominently featured. Nowhere in this tweet or anywhere else does Ms. Heard disavow the title. To the contrary, she's proclaiming it. And at the same time, Ms. Heard posted this tweet, she posted another, which you can see right beneath it. Quote, I'm honored to announce my role as an ACLU ambassador on women's rights, unquote, aggrandizing herself at the expense of Mr. Depp. So make no mistake, this was about Mr. Depp. In the wake of the Me Too movement, with her ACLU ambassadorship and a major movie coming out, Ms. Heard was trading on her accusations of abuse against Mr. Depp. She was reminding everyone of those allegations. She was once again taking on the role of her lifetime, the heroic survivor of vicious abuse, or to use her phrase, quote, a public figure representing abuse. And she was once again casting Mr. Depp as the villain in her drama, the supposed perpetrator of that abuse. When you meet to deliberate this case, you're going to be tasked with several questions. Those questions appear on a form that you will use to reach your verdict in this case. So I'd just like to ask you, please, to spend a few minutes with me going through that. Tom, would you please put up the special verdict form so the jury can see it? Some of it's hard to read, so maybe Tom might please blow it up. Oh, thank you very much. You will see here the first page of the verdict form relating to Mr. Depp's claim for defamation against Ms. Heard. There are 3 pages relating to Mr. Depp's claim, one for each of the 3 defamatory statements in the op-ed that form the basis of Mr. Depp's claim against Ms. Heard. You've heard those 3 statements many times, but they bear repeating. I promise, just once more here. 1, quote, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, unquote. 2, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out, unquote. 3, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse, unquote. Now, there are 7 questions that you will need to please answer with respect to each of those statements. So that's 21 questions, I think, but 7 as to each statement. 1, was the statement made or published by Ms. Heard? 2, was the statement about Mr. Depp? 3, was the statement false? 4, did the statement have a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp? 5, was the defamatory implication designed and intended by Ms. Heard? 6, was the defamatory implication conveyed to someone other than Mr. Depp? 7, did Ms. Heard make the statement with actual malice, which is, Her Honor explained, meaning did Ms. Heard make the statement knowing it was false or with reckless disregard as to the truth? Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence clearly shows that the answers to those 7 questions are all yes. And if you answer yes to all of those questions, which you should, we respectfully submit, you will be asked to state the amount of damages to which Mr. Depp is entitled. In the wake of the Me Too movement, movie producers know better than to cast a movie star who has been accused of domestic and sexual violence. And it is entirely within your discretion as jurors to quantify the amount of money that constitutes fair compensation for Mr. Depp's pain and humiliation inflicted by Ms. Heard's defamation. But while Mr. Depp certainly is entitled to monetary compensation, this case, at least for Mr. Depp, has never been about money. This case for Mr. Depp has never been about money, nor is it about punishing Ms. Heard. It is about Mr. Depp's reputation and freeing him from the prison in which he has lived for the last 6 years, and it's 6 years to the day. The most important questions for Mr. Depp, the ones truly at the heart of this case, are questions 2, 3, and 4 on the verdict form. And while Tom's pulling that up, let's take question 2. Thank you. Were the statements about Mr. Depp? Yes. 2 points here. 1, when the ACLU pitched the op-ed to the Washington Post, I think you'll remember this, they pitched it as, quote, a piece by Amber Heard, who, as you know, was beaten up during her brief marriage to Johnny Depp, unquote. That's how they pitched it. 2, after the op-ed was published, news outlets, including USA Today, and you've seen that was an exhibit, characterized the op-ed as referring to Ms. Heard's allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp. So the USA Today interpreted it that way, and so did many other publications. They got exactly the implication that Ms. Heard and the ACLU
Hey guys.
allegations
By the way, guys, if you see me looking down,
of
I'm
abuse
taking
against
notes.
Mr. Thomas, can you please pull up?
So the USA Today interpreted it that way, and so did many other publications. They got the implication that Ms. Heard and the ACLU intended them to have.
This is what they wanted.
Tom, if you would please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 409.
Tom is the MVP of this trial. Let's just be honest. The tech has been pretty flawless in a very, very tech-heavy trial,
And this was expected.
and that's
What
critical.
they wanted.
The domestic
There
violence.
had been a lot of press 2 years prior to the publication of the op-ed
Reminding them about the press.
about Ms. Heard's claims of abuse against Mr. Depp when she walked into court with her publicist to obtain the domestic violence, the no notice.
When your husband is halfway.
They have 2 hours total.
Mr. Depp.
They have to decide how to use it, but they only have 2 hours total.
Already in New York,
On May
which
27th,
he testified Ms. Heard was well aware of.
with a purported mark.
You don't need a domestic
Everyone
violence
knew
restraining order
exactly
when your
who-
husband is
who and
halfway
what
across
Ms.
the
Heard was
continent
referring
and
to
is heading
in
for
the
a
op-ed.
European
She was
tour.
referring
Unless you want
to
to change the lock, James Franco over, just saying.
Let's take,
They
On
could decide
May
this today.
27th,
He gave them a way to do that.
2016, with
He
a
gave them
purported
an hour
mark on her face.
to get this done fast.
were
Everyone
each
knew
of the
exactly
statements false?
who and what
And
Ms.
did the
Heard was
statements
referring
have
to
an
in the
inflammatory
op-ed. She was referring
on
to Mr. Depp.
Again, clear answer.
Let's take questions 2 and 3 next,
Statements
if we can.
understood
The
in
jury
context
must be
The clear
unanimous.
answer is
I like
yes.
how they're walking through the facts that match.
coverage of
And did the
Heard
statements
walking
have an
into the court with
inflammatory
a mark on her face
implication
to obtain
on Mr. Depp?
domestic violence
Again, the
restraining
clear
order
answer is yes.
against Mr. Depp
The
in May
statements
2016
understood in the context
Implied
of the op-ed
clearly
itself.
that
And
Mr.
in-
Depp physically and sexually abused Ms. Heard. Overwhelming evidence
That Mr.
that you all have heard and has come forward in this case shows that those allegations are false and despicably false. Mr. Depp did not physically abuse Ms. Heard. He did not sexually abuse Ms. Heard. You've heard audio after audio where Ms. Heard admits that she was physically
Sexually
abusing him.
He looks like he's thinking very deep. I don't know why, what's happening, but it looks like he's thinking very deep.
False allegations. This case is about telling you his story and the truth about what really happened, which you've now heard. It is about restoring his lost reputation. It's about showing Mr. Depp's children, Lily Rose and Jack, that the truth is worth fighting for. It is. And it's about restoring Mr. Depp's name and standing in the community to the fullest extent that you can. And you can do something. And only you, ladies and gentlemen, can do that for him. You heard from Mr. Depp yesterday that he has been carrying these outlandish, outrageous stories on his back, pretty stoically, and living them with them for 6 years and waiting to be able to bring his truth out. And he has told you the truth, the unvarnished truth, even truth that pretty embarrassing. He knew that was going to happen when he brought this case. You've seen the evidence in this case over 6 long weeks, which we again thank you for. That evidence shows overwhelmingly that Ms. Heard's attempt to paint herself as a heroic survivor, an innocent survivor, and Mr.
Is she
Depp
though?
as a terrifying abuser are utterly false. We ask you to please return your verdict for Mr. Depp. We ask you, we implore you to give him.
No offense, but what kind of heroic survivor is she?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't want to be
Go ahead
biased.
and take a break at this
Oh,
time.
we're taking a break.
Again, this case has not been submitted to you yet. We will continue with closing arguments when we come back. So do not discuss the case with yourselves. Don't do any outside research, okay? Thank you.
We're going to a break. Keep break. Look at his smirk. I love JD. I'm not against Ember, but I love JD. Sorry. Like, I'm not picking sides, but
Let's come back at 11:05.
big fan of JD's.
Okay, sure.
We'll be back at 11:05, guys, I guess. Well, it's been a very interesting closing arguments from like Mr. Tom and Camille. I don't know. And that they said that like Mr. Depp doesn't want no money. He doesn't want no money. They might win with this. They might really win. looks like they live in the courts. Well, I'm gonna see what Miss Emily Baker is doing on her channel. Oh, wait. Yeah, just leaving. Hello, yeah, I'm back.
I do. We also got your emails. Yes, I have questions. It's now in a short sleeve shirt. It is. It's just there. It's there. It's there. So we added those at lawnerdshop.com. So thank you for everyone who requested it. We got you. We thought it was a cheeky way to memorialize the trial. I shared my experience from 45 years ago with y'all a few days ago. Camille's closing felt like vindication. I'm so glad. I just had a good cleansing cry for myself.
Okay.
Emotions need to move. They're supposed to be in motion.
If you guys were interested in my notes, this is what I have so far.
The many who've lived through this and both felt both unheard and unseen. I think that both attorneys addressed victims and acknowledged victims in a very respectful way. It had to be addressed because they're sitting there calling Amber Heard a liar. And it has to be addressed that there are victims of horrific abuse. And Camille said either you believe all of it or none of it. Don't deliberate. Don't go. Camille said, don't go claim by claim. Don't go incident by incident. You believe all of it or you believe none of it. And that is a strong position from a team that very clearly believes their client should win. And of course they do. They are zealous advocates for their client. Let's see. Is Amber Heard writing so much to journal this for a book or memoir? I don't know. Obviously, can't get inside the mind of someone else. It feels like stress to me. But that's because that's what I do. When I want to remember something or if I'm feeling something, she can't express emotion. It might just be a way for her to let it out. Again, it needs to move. My thoughts is it will be a way to try to make money after this. I don't know. If he wins money, though, that money will go right to him. So maybe not. Question, is this why Ron Bourne left out sexual violence during redirect the other day? I thought it was very, very telling that Ron Bourne did not ask Amber Heard on redirect if she was a victim of sexual violence.
Let's check up of one of my favorite last streamers.
Abuse after abuse, emotional, physical, on and on and on. What he did not say was sexual violence. And I think the jury, if they do not believe Amber Heard, can find the headline was the defamatory part. We will never know what they decide other than their verdict. We will not know how they deliberate it. I don't know where we're at on the finger. Oh, 555, there we go. On the back end, we're at 556. So for all the 200,000 of you here, I guess we're on the road to 600,000 or something. Will we get there today? Who knows? Would that be insane? Yes. But if you want to, support the channel, go ahead and do the thing. I thought it was telling that he left it out. Very, very telling. They did not capitalize on that and mention it yet. I don't know if they will, or if they'll save it for rebuttal and say that Amber Heard on the stand did not say when asked by her attorney. But it might be just
for the channel. Go ahead and do the thing. I thought it was telling that he left it out. Very, very telling. They did not capitalize on that and mention it yet. I don't know if they will, or if they'll save it for rebuttal and say that Amber Heard on the stand has not said when asked by her attorney. But it might be just step away from that as quickly as possible and just leave it be. Y'all are doing things. Look at you. Chat, you are so great. You are so wise. You have pointed things out that I forgot that Kate Moss, so much has happened in this trial. I forgot that Kate Moss said that Johnny Depp ended it. And y'all are like, he ended it. And I'm like, chat, thank you for having my back, as you always do. This community makes me want to cry literally on the daily. I love you all so much. Okay.
No, we love you though, Emily.
Not
how
money.
You're watching
not
this.
Jail. Jail is not what we're at here. If she gets investigated down the road for something else, that possibility can change. On this case, liability, reputation, and money. Interesting, Amber filed on Lily Rose's birthday. I had not connected the dots until they connected it in closing because I've got all my notes with my little timeline of this case. But I had totally forgotten. But it is interesting. And he was out. So with everything in the shop, it is not limited edition. It's there, it's available. Join late. Does the jury get to keep written copies of the instructions? Laurel, great question. Yes, they do. They get to go back. I've seen jurors because leave them in the jury room. I've seen them like marked up, like Hogue Law marks up an article in the media to break it down. I've seen them kind of parsed out when they're trying to understand. This jury might not care, and they might just go directly to, we're going to go look at it real quick because I think it's helpful. I'm going to go to my Twitter because I posted the picture. Just bought one of my mugs. Ashley, thank you. Appreciate it. I know my phone is, I can see my phone blowing up and it's just like, I can see it. So thank you. Did you get your muffin for closing? We had a lot going on this week. And we have cupcakes in the house, but we do not have muffins. My husband, though, is on his way to go grocery shop, so maybe muffins will appear, but I don't know. I am still hoping for muffins, but no, not yet. It's been a busy week. My oldest graduated from 8th grade this week, so it's been a really busy week. Okay, let's go to these. I'm going to go to my Twitter if you guys want to follow me there at the Emily D. Baker, but this is to look at this photo that I shared on Twitter because it's the easiest way to pull it up. Yes, it's a little blurry. Apologies, all the apologies. I'm sorry that it's blurry. But this is the verdict form. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all of the elements of defamation? Answer yes or no. If you answer question 3, no, go to number 4. If he hasn't proven it, it's like go to the next page. If you answered yes, please answer yes or no to the following questions. Has Mr. Depp proven by a greater weight of the evidence that the statement was made or published by Heard? Easy yes. The statement was about Depp? Easy yes. The statement was false? They're going to have to talk about it. The statement has a defamatory implication? Yes. The defamatory implication was designed and intended by Miss Heard? Yes or no? And that, again, if I'm Team Heard, I'm arguing that that headline was not designed by her and that everything else is true, because all of the other stuff about domestic abuse, you could see the jury going, this was an abusive relationship. But when it comes to that headline, they are going to have to say, was the headline and the implication of the headline designed and intended by Miss Heard? There might be room for discussion. If I'm Team Heard, I am arguing that point. I mean, after you argue that it's not false. They got to argue that first. The defamation implication was designed. Due to circumstances surrounding the publication of the statement, it conveyed a defamatory implication to someone who saw it other than Mr. Depp. Did it convey a defamatory meaning to literally the world? And they told the world, Team Heard, that justice for Johnny Depp is a thing. They told the jury that. Total happy planner fan. Total. That's yes. Yep. Total and complete. What is the difference between a cupcake and a muffin? Delicious frosting is the only real difference.